Son said I was a burden. I didn't hear it by accident. I heard it because the hallway in my own house carries sound like a confession booth. I can't keep paying for her, Daniel muttered. She just sits there. She's a burden. A burden. The word didn't hit my ears first. It hit my chest, hard like something collapsing inside me. Before I go any further, where are you watching from? Drop your city and state in the comments below. And tell me honestly, if your child called you a burden, what would you do? I'm Evelyn Harper. I'm 53 years old. I built this house with my late husband. Brick by brick, overtime shift by overtime shift. I raised Daniel alone after Robert passed from a stroke. I worked in real estate for 22 years. I negotiated contracts, closed deals, managed crises. But apparently, I was just sitting there. I stood frozen outside the kitchen that night, grocery bags cutting into my fingers. His wife, Melissa, lowered her voice, but not enough. She doesn't even help with anything. And the market is perfect right now. If we sell, we could move to Austin. Start fresh without complications. Complications. That's what I had become. I quietly stepped back before they could see me. My reflection in the hallway mirror startled me. I didn't look weak. I didn't look helpless. I looked tired. And tired women are often mistaken for powerless ones. They were wrong. I carried the groceries into my room instead of the kitchen. I needed silence. Needed to think. Daniel had moved back in 2 years ago after his startup failed. I welcomed him with open arms. This is your home, I told him. Technically, it wasn't. It was mine. Robert made sure of that before he passed. The deed was in my name. Always had been. But Daniel never asked. That night at dinner, Melissa wore her usual polished smile. Mom, she said sweetly, we were thinking maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere with community activities. Community activities. I repeated calmly. An assisted living complex, Daniel added, not meeting my eyes. It's not forever. Just until we figure things out. Figure things out. Like how to erase me. I placed my fork down carefully. Are you struggling financially? I asked. Daniel stiffened. That's not the point. Oh, but it was. I had noticed the overdue notices hidden under junk mail. The late-night arguments. Melissa's sudden obsession with Zillow. I may be 53, but I'm not invisible. And I'm certainly not foolish. I smiled softly. I'll think about it. Relief flooded Melissa's face too quickly. That was when I understood. This wasn't concern. This was strategy. Later that night, I opened my office drawer and took out the leather folder Robert left behind. Inside were copies of the deed, our savings portfolio, and something Daniel had never seen the trust. I had updated it quietly last year, not because I didn't love my son, but because I believe love should never blind you. As I sat there reviewing numbers under the dim desk lamp, a strange calm settled over me. The betrayal is loud at first. It screams. It burns. But once it cools, it sharpens. If they thought I was a burden, they had clearly underestimated me. And I have always been very good at letting people underestimate me. The next morning, I woke up before them. I dressed carefully. Navy blazer. Pearl earrings. The kind of outfit that says control without raising its voice. When Melissa walked into the kitchen, she blinked. Big plans today. Yes, I replied, pouring my coffee slowly. I have an appointment. With who? Daniel asked from the doorway. I looked at him evenly. With someone who specializes in transitions. I let the sentence hang there. And for the first time in a very long while, I wasn't the one feeling uncertain. With someone who specializes in transitions. That's what I told Daniel. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the kind of transition they were imagining. I drove downtown to meet Gregory Hale, my attorney of 15 years. I hadn't needed him recently, but I never stopped paying attention. Women who survive loss learn one thing quickly. Security is quiet preparation. Gregory stood when I entered his office. "Evelyn, it's been a while." "It has," I said, taking the seat across from him. "I need to make adjustments." He studied my face. "Family?" I nodded once. "My son thinks I'm a burden." Gregory didn't react emotionally. "That's why I trust him." "And is that what you are?" I almost smiled. "No, I'm an asset." I laid out everything calmly, the assisted living suggestion, the overheard conversation, the Zillow searches, the financial strain I had quietly observed. Daniel's failed business left him desperate. Melissa's ambition made her impatient. "They believe this house is their next step," I said evenly. "They just need me out of the way." Gregory leaned back. "And what would you like to do?" That question lingered. For years, I had lived cautiously, careful not to embarrass Daniel, careful not to assert authority, careful not to appear controlling. But caution is often mistaken for weakness. "I want to protect myself," I said finally. "And I want to protect what Robert and I built." Gregory opened the leather folder containing my trust. "You updated this last year. Everything currently transfers to Daniel upon your death." "Change it," I said softly. 2. I inhaled slowly. This was not about punishment. It was about clarity. Create a conditional trust. He inherits only if he proves financial stability 4 to consecutive years and completes the business. Certification program he abandoned. Gregory's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's structured." "I've spent my life structuring things." "And if he fails to meet the conditions?" "It transfers to the Harper Foundation account." He blinked. "You never told me you were forming a foundation." "I am now." Silence settled between us. Not dramatic, not explosive, just decisive. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. This was strategy fueled by observation. Before leaving, I added one more change. "The house," I said carefully. "Place it into a revocable living trust under my foundation's umbrella. Effective immediately." Gregory nodded slowly. "Once it's transferred, they can't sell it. Not without your authorization." Exactly. When I stepped back into the sunlight, I felt lighter. Not because the betrayal hurt less, but because I had moved. That evening, Daniel cornered me in the living room. "Mom, did you think about what we discussed?" I folded my knitting calmly. "Yes. And I'm considering all options." Melissa joined us, arms crossed. "You'd be happier somewhere social." "You don't even go out much anymore." "I go out plenty," I replied. "You just don't notice." Daniel sighed. "We're trying to build something here." "Are you?" I asked gently. "Or are you trying to escape something?" His jaw tightened. I saw it then, the shame beneath his frustration. The insecurity. Melissa had been pushing him. I could sense it. Whispering about fresh starts. Bigger cities. Bigger opportunities. And bigger houses. Later that night, as I passed their bedroom, I heard Melissa's voice again. "She's stalling," she hissed. "We need leverage." Leverage. I paused outside their door. Leverage meant pressure. Pressure meant they were planning something. And that was when the real shift happened inside me. Because betrayal is one thing, but strategy against me. That requires precision. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my bedroom door. Inside was a brochure for an assisted living facility, highlighted in yellow, and a sticky note in Melissa's handwriting. We scheduled a tour for Friday. They hadn't asked. They had decided. I stood there holding the brochure, reading words like peaceful retirement, Supportive care, safe transition. Safe for who? I walked back into my room, closed the door quietly, and opened my laptop. If they wanted to schedule tours, so could I. Just not for assisted living. For something much bigger and much more permanent. If they wanted leverage, I would give them something else instead. Power. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had changed. Blueberry pancakes. Daniel's favorite since he was 10. Melissa watched me carefully, like I might suddenly announce surrender. Don't forget, she said lightly. The tour is at 3. I smiled. Oh, I didn't. Daniel avoided eye contact. That hurt more than the brochure. But pain is information, and I collect information. After they left for work, I drove to a different kind of appointment downtown Seattle Business Alliance. I hadn't stepped into that building in years, but the scent of polished floors and ambition still felt familiar. Clara Martinez, the director, greeted me warmly. Evelyn Harper, I heard you retired. I redirected. I corrected softly. We sat down. I outlined my idea quickly. A women-led real estate advisory firm focused on financial literacy for divorced and widowed women, workshops, consulting, strategic investing. Clara leaned forward. That's needed, especially now. I know. I had lived it. I'll need office space, small, discreet, and I want to launch within 60 days. She studied me. This isn't a hobby, is it? No, I said calmly. It's insurance. When I returned home, Daniel was pacing the living room. Mom, where were you? We were supposed to leave. I set my purse down. I had something more important. Melissa's expression tightened. This isn't about pride, Evelyn. It's about practicality. Is it? I asked quietly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. You can't keep living like this. You barely leave the house. I looked at him carefully. You mean I can't keep owning the house? Silence. Melissa's mask slipped for half a second. There are financial realities, she snapped. Yes, I agreed. There are. I walked to the hallway cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. Calmly, deliberately. I met with my attorney, I said. Daniel's face changed instantly. Why? Because transitions require paperwork. Melissa stiffened. What did you do? I didn't answer directly. I secured the house under a living trust. Effective immediately. Daniel blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said evenly, no one can sell it. Not without my consent. The room felt smaller. Melissa's voice sharpened. You're overreacting. No, I replied softly. I'm responding. Daniel looked between us, confused, unsettled. Mom, why would you do that? Because you called me a burden. Because you planned my exit. Because you underestimated me. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I smiled gently. I'm planning for my future. Melissa's jaw tightened. And what about ours? I held her gaze steadily. That depends on how you treat mine. The air shifted. This was no longer about assisted living. It was about control. And for the first time since Robert died, I felt it returning to my hands. That evening, the silence at dinner wasn't peaceful. It was strategic. Daniel barely touched his food. Melissa kept glancing at me like I might suddenly reverse everything. You didn't have to involve a lawyer, she said finally. Her tone sweet but tight. I didn't involve him. I replied calmly. I consulted him. Daniel sighed. Mom, this feels extreme. Extreme. I looked at him evenly. Scheduling tours for me without asking wasn't extreme. He looked down. Melissa stepped in quickly. We were trying to be proactive. Proactive, I repeated softly. Or opportunistic. Her jaw tightened. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. We're struggling, Mom. The business failed. Credit cards are piling up. We thought if we sold the house. There is no mortgage. I interrupted gently. He blinked. What? The house has been paid off for over a decade. Melissa stiffened. Then that's even more reason to sell. It's just sitting there. Just sitting there. Like me. I folded my napkin neatly. Equity is not desperation. It's security. Daniel looked confused. Why didn't you ever say that? Because you never asked about my finances. I answered. You assumed. Melissa crossed her arms. Families share resources. Families also share respect. I said calmly. Silence. Daniel's voice dropped. You heard us. Didn't you? Yes. His face fell. Melissa tried to recover. We were frustrated. That doesn't mean we meant it. You meant it at that moment, I replied. And that's enough. The air felt heavier now, real honest. Daniel looked at me carefully. What exactly did you change? I placed the house into a living trust. I said evenly. It cannot be sold without my approval. Melissa's eyes widened. You locked us out of the decision. No, I corrected. I locked everyone out. Daniel stared at the table. So what now? Now, I said, I focus on my future. Melissa frowned. You mean this firm idea? Yes. You're serious about that? I've already secured office space. Daniel looked up, surprised. You're going back to real estate. I'm building something new, I said. Advisory work. Financial strategy for women who've been underestimated. Melissa let out a short breath. This is about proving something. No, I replied quietly. This is about protecting myself. Daniel's voice softened. We weren't trying to erase you. But you were preparing to, I said. That truth sat between us. Melissa stood first. If we can't build a future here, maybe we shouldn't stay. I held her gaze calmly. That is your choice. Daniel looked torn, guilty, defensive, unsure. For the first time, they realized something important. I was not dependent. I was deliberate. And I was no longer waiting for their permission to matter. The next morning, I woke up before them, sipping coffee quietly. The house was mine, but the real battle wasn't walls, it was perception. Daniel was pacing by the window. Mom, why are you up so early? I like mornings, I said. It's when decisions are made. Melissa appeared, arms crossed. Decisions like. I smiled faintly. How to turn betrayal into opportunity. Her brow furrowed. Opportunity. She hadn't expected that. After breakfast, I drafted a careful plan. I would launch a women-led real estate advisory firm, helping those dismissed or underestimated, using the experience I'd lived myself. Old colleagues and mentors responded quickly, ready to support me. By mid-afternoon, Daniel returned. He froze seeing me at my laptop, emails sent, calls lined up, notes everywhere. Mom, this is fast, he said uncertainly. Life doesn't wait for permission, I replied calmly. Melissa whispered behind him, You're serious about this? Absolutely, I said. And I intend to succeed. Their faces changed. They'd assumed I was powerless, but now. Every step I took was proving otherwise. Later, Daniel admitted softly, Mom, maybe we overreacted. We didn't realize how much you could still do. Overreacted or underestimated? I asked. Probably both, he muttered. I nodded, lesson learned. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. Melissa glanced at me. You've changed. I smiled. That smile carried weight. I am in control. I am not afraid. I will not be erased. Before bed, I posted a small call to action online. If you've ever been underestimated, know your experience can become your power. Comment where you're watching from. Share your story. Connection is influence, and I was quietly reclaiming both. That night, anticipation replaced fear. Revenge doesn't have to be loud, it can be strategic, slow, and completely satisfying. Melissa passed the living room. "You really are unstoppable." I smiled. And deep inside, I knew she wasn't wrong. The next morning, the energy in the house was different. Daniel and Melissa moved cautiously, like they were tiptoeing around a storm they didn't see coming. And they weren't wrong. I had spent the night planning, calculating every step of my comeback. The advisory firm would launch in 2 weeks. But I also had smaller, subtle moves in motion, ones they couldn't. Anticipate, influence, reputation, quiet dominance. When Daniel asked about the paperwork for the house, I replied calmly, "Everything is secure. No one can sell it without my approval." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "You're really doing this to prove a point, aren't you?" I leaned back, letting a small smile play across my lips. Not to prove a point, to protect myself and my future. The realization hit them slowly. They had tried to corner me, schedule me out, and assume I was powerless. And now I was moving faster, smarter, and stronger than they could imagine. Later that day, I invited a few key contacts to my office space downtown. As I walked through polished glass doors, I felt a rush of clarity. This was mine. Not a fight. Not a competition. My opportunity to shine, and my revenge didn't need confrontation. Back home, Melissa tried to corner me in the kitchen. "Why are you moving so fast?" "Because the opportunity doesn't wait," I replied. Daniel watched silently. His hesitation was palpable. He had always looked to me for guidance, and now he realized the tables had turned. By evening, I had scheduled workshops, client meetings, and interviews for media coverage. Every email, every call, every small victory was a statement. Melissa tried one more time. "Don't you think you're overextending?" I fixed her with a calm stare. "I've never been overextended. I've been underestimated." Daniel sighed, "Mom, we thought we knew you." I smiled faintly. "You thought?" I knew. The tension in the air was electric. I had turned betrayal into momentum. Their attempts to dismiss me had only fueled me. That night, I checked my growing subscriber list for the advisory blog I'd quietly started. Comments rolled in, women sharing their own frustrations, their own stories of being underestimated. Connection and influence were building faster than I imagined. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet thrills sink in. Revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about using intelligence, observation, and action to turn betrayal into empowerment. Melissa muttered under her breath as she passed by, "She's unstoppable." I didn't respond. I let her words linger in the air, because soon they would understand fully. My success, my control, my influence, these were my revenge. And it was far more satisfying than anger could ever be. The morning sunlight felt golden, but inside me, it was electric. 2 weeks had passed since I quietly launched the advisory firm. The house remained untouched, my trust secure, and Daniel and Melissa's assumptions crumbling. Every step I took, calls, workshops, meetings, was deliberate, demonstrating power they hadn't anticipated. Influence and reputation were quietly building, and my betrayers were noticing. Daniel entered the living room. "Mom, the workshops, the coverage. You're really doing this." "Of course," I replied calmly. When underestimated, action speaks louder than words. Melissa appeared behind him, voice low. "You've grown beyond what we expected." I walked past them with a stack of documents, contracts, sponsorships, client lists. "This house, this business, my life. It's mine." I wasn't planning to share it with anyone unprepared. Daniel swallowed. We didn't understand. We thought you could erase me," I said evenly. "But no one erases what they've built, especially not me." Melissa's lips pressed tight. You didn't just protect yourself. You flourished. I nodded exactly. Revenge isn't confrontation. It's thriving when others expect you to fail. Turning betrayal into power. They finally looked at me fully. The quiet confidence, control, momentum, they could see it now. For a moment, I allowed satisfaction to cross my face, not cruelly, but deliberately. I opened my laptop. Notifications from clients, partners, followers scrolled rapidly. Every message, every inquiry reminded me their attempt to dismiss me had fueled my ascent. Melissa whispered as she passed, "She's unstoppable." I didn't respond. I let her words linger. Soon, they would understand fully my success. My control and my influence were my revenge. Daniel's voice dropped, "Mom, we respect your decisions now." I nodded calmly. Good respect is earned through action, not assumption. The house was quiet again, but the power had shifted permanently. Betrayal had become triumph. Their anger and disappointment no longer mattered. What mattered was what I had built, protected, and would continue to grow. I leaned back, letting the quiet satisfaction sink in, and whispered softly to myself, "Until next time." See you in the next video.